All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're tackling a law that deals with one of the most corrosive and, frankly, secretive of all human emotions, envy. This is our deep dive into Law 46, Never Appear Too Perfect.
You know, the ancient historian Plutarch, he absolutely nailed something crucial more than 2,000 years ago. He said, envy is the only disorder of the soul that no one ever confesses to. Think about that. It's this universal feeling, right? But it's so shameful, so tied up in admitting your own inferiority that it almost always operates in the shadows. And that right there is what makes it so unbelievably dangerous.
So let's lay out the law itself. The judgment is crystal clear. Appearing better than other people, it doesn't create fans. It creates silent enemies. Being too good, too talented, too successful, that doesn't inspire admiration. No, it inspires this quiet, festering resentment. It literally makes people want to see you fail. Now, the key here isn't to be mediocre, not at all. It's all about strategically managing the appearance of your perfection.
Okay, to really understand just how high the stakes are here, we have to look at what happens when someone breaks this law. And this is a truly tragic story. The story of the playwright Joe Orton, a man whose brilliant success basically signed his own death warrant. So just look at this timeline. You can see exactly how this deadly dynamic built up over time. Orton and his partner, Kenneth Halliwell, they start out as equals in 1953. I mean, they were collaborators, lovers, struggling artists, together. But then, in just a few short years, that whole balance just shifts dramatically. By 64, Orton has a massive hit play. By 66, he's a star. And Halliwell? He's just left behind, completely in Orton's shadow. It's this rapid split, this divergence, that really planted the seeds of a lethal envy. And this right here, this is what's so powerful. It lays out the growing chasm between them so clearly. For every single step up Orton took, Halliwell felt like he was taking a step down. Orton becomes this famous playwright. Halliwell gets reduced to being his personal assistant. Orton is charming and full of life. Halliwell becomes awkward and defensive. Orton is making his own money. Halliwell is basically living off a handout. You see, this wasn't just a gap in success. It was a daily, constant, humiliating reminder to Halliwell of his own failure. And listen to this. This quote is just chilling. It shows that Orton himself was aware of the danger, even if he couldn't quite put his finger on where it was coming from. This is from his diary, just 3 months before he was murdered. He's saying he felt his life was, well, too perfect, that some cosmic force was going to come and balance the scales. What's so tragic is that he never suspected that the force of nature he had to fear was sleeping in the very same apartment. So here's the crucial point. Halliwell's suicide note. It literally said, if you read Orton's diary, all will be explained. And this is what the diary revealed. This wasn't some sudden psychotic break. No, this was the result of years and years of envy just eating him alive. When Halliwell finally realized he could never ever rise to Orton's level, he did the only thing he could think of to make them equals again. He brought Orton down to his level, in death. Okay, so that's the grim warning. That's the fatal cost of ignoring envy. But what does it look like to actually master it? Well, for that, we need to turn to someone who understood its destructive power and basically turned deflecting it into an art form. I'm talking about the great Florentine ruler Cosimo de' Medici. So you have to understand the world Cosimo was living in. He's in the Republic of Florence, a place that prided itself on equality. They despised tyrants. And here's Cosimo becoming fabulously wealthy, incredibly powerful. But he absolutely knew that if he looked too powerful, his rivals and even the public would tear him to pieces. So his challenge was immense. How do you rule without ever appearing to be a ruler? And this is how he pulled it off. Publicly, he was just one of the guys, a man of the people. He dressed modestly, rode a mule, not a fancy horse. He acted humbly, he'd bow to other people in the street. But privately, he was the puppet master. He was secretly controlling the entire government through his allies. He was taxing his enemies into bankruptcy. For 30 years, he held the real strings of power in Florence, all while keeping up this incredible facade of just being a simple private citizen. And this quote right here was his guiding principle. Envy is a weed that should not be watered. Simple, right? Every single public action he took was designed to starve that weed. He understood a fundamental truth. You don't fight envy head on. You just give it nothing to feed on. So the ultimate lesson we can take from Cosimo is this. The appearance of being superior, it's worthless. In fact, it's worse than worthless. It's a liability. Real, true power lies in having the actual influence while you let other people have the spotlight. Let them think they're in charge. Meanwhile, you are. Okay, so we've got these incredible historical lessons. How do we translate them into a practical toolkit that you can actually use? Let's break down the actual strategies for actively managing envy in your own life.
All right, here are 4 concrete things you can do. Step 1, display a harmless defect. Admit to a small flaw. It makes you human. And more importantly, it makes you seem less like some kind of godlike threat to people. Step 2, attribute your success to luck. Downplay your own skill. Just say you were in the right place at the right time. Third, emphasize your burdens. Talk about the stress, the long hours, the sacrifices that come with your success. Make it seem a little less desirable. And finally, step 4, just like Cosimo, seem unambitious. Never appear too hungry for power.
Now, a huge part of this battle is learning how to recognize envy before it can actually hurt you, because it almost never shows its true face. So you've got to watch for the disguises. Be really wary of excessive over-the-top praise. A lot of times, that's just a setup for your fall. Same thing goes for hypercriticism or constant biting sarcasm. These are the masks envy wears to wound you while still being able to say, "Hey, I was just kidding." Okay, and this is a critical warning. You have to listen to this. Never, ever try to help or do favors for people who envy you. Just don't do it. Remember Joe Orton? He tried to help Halliwell. He got him an art show. But to Halliwell, that wasn't help. It was charity. It was a condescending pat on the head, a reminder of his own inferiority. Your attempts to help someone who envies you will always be seen as a power play, and all it does is add more fuel to their hatred. Right. So far, everything we've talked about has been defense, deflection, playing it safe. But there is one final, very advanced application of this law. It's the reversal. And you only use this when you are in a position of truly unassailable power. But what happens when being careful only makes things worse? What do you do when your enviers see your humility and they just interpret it as another sign of how superior you are? What happens when their envy is so intense, so deep, that it's just unavoidable? This is the reversal. You stop hiding. You stop deflecting. You embrace your perfection and you flaunt your success. You make it so blindingly obvious that you are superior, that your very existence becomes a kind of living hell for them. They are trapped, stewing in their own envy, while you are completely free in your power. And there is no better example of this reversal in action than the story of Michelangelo. See, the architect Bramante was just sick with envy over Michelangelo's talent as a sculptor. So he sets a trap. He convinces the Pope to make Michelangelo paint the Sistine Chapel ceiling, a medium he wasn't famous for, hoping it would be a total disaster and ruin his reputation. But Michelangelo, he saw the trap. He accepted the commission without a word of complaint. And then he used all of Bramante's envy as fuel. He created a masterpiece so perfect, so godlike, that it not only secured his own legacy forever, but it stands today as a permanent, eternal monument to Bramante's petty, failed envy. So we'll end on this powerful, almost chilling thought from the philosopher Baltasar Gracian. The heaven of the envied is hell for the envious. Think about that. Ultimately, the greatest revenge you can ever take against envy isn't some petty scheme. It's just to succeed, to thrive, to achieve everything you set out to do. Because your success, that becomes their prison. Your fame becomes their personal torment. They are forced to live in a world where you have won. And that is a punishment far greater than any you could ever devise yourself.